Vinfast, that upstart EV SUV manufacturer from Vietnam, is making a little bit of a splash by offering an unbelievable price on a 36-month lease, $249 a month. This has been getting some airplay out there, as well as the expected criticism of they're giving the cars away. Well, there's some truth to that, but I actually think they're resetting and that this number isn't half bad. Welcome back to All Cars, my friends. If you are new here, my name is John, and I've talked a lot about Vinfast, and recently they've started offering a lease deal. Now, they've been offering leases for a while, and that was probably a smart move. These cars have been rightly criticized, and although Vinfast has been working over the last year to really fix issues, you still have a constant stream of the infotainment screen locks up, or the car just turns off and leaves people stranded, or whatever it happens to be. They're better, but they're not there yet. They're not great. And so Vinfast has been offering these leases, and basically their discounts have been getting bigger and bigger. So now, if you go over here to the Vinfast site, you can actually drive a VF8 for $249 a month. With a little asterisk right there, only available for California residents. Well, that turns out that's not quite true. Now, if you look at this, it's a Eco, Vinfast VF8 Eco, $249 a month, 36 month. It's 10,000 miles a year, 30,000 miles, and MSRP of that is $47,200. And we're going to come back to this description in a minute because it's kind of important. But you can go over here, here in North Carolina, over in Cary, out just in the Raleigh area, Lease Vinfast. And sure enough, there you've got a $249 a month, 36-month lease on the Eco, $47,325,000 MSRP, or you can get a $299 a month on the Plus, which is a $53,000 vehicle. Now, these are almost the cheapest leases out there, and certainly kind of in the electric vehicle space. Let's look at this. This is carsdirect.com. If we look at cheapest SUVs, there's the Vinfast. They actually had their $249 a month. Chevy Equinox for $299, a Compass for $259. So that's for 42 months. So even the Compass is more than the Vinfast. If you go down to the mid-sized SUVs, well, ironically, you can get a Terrain for 24 months for $189. So it's certainly in the range, but you know, most of these are $300 some odd dollars. And let's look at Tesla. Okay, now the Model Y is probably the closest competitor to the VF8. There we go, scrolling. Purchase price is $43. Okay, so it's already less expensive than the Eco version of the VF8. Lease is starting at $379 a month. And what's important here, that's with a down payment of $3,500. That Vinfast one, there's no down payment to get to that $249. Now, there's obviously some other fees you need to pay along the way, but this starts to look like a suspicious deal. It's obvious that something's going on and the manufacturer is buying down the lease, right? Making it more affordable for people to move the metal. So I wanted to do a little research, and I decided to approach it two different ways, and I'm going to share that with you here today. Number one is I did what any good former engineer would do, and I created a spreadsheet. Now, I am not a finance professional. I know there's stuff missing out of here. Trust me, I know I know, but I just wanted to take a broad look at something. And generally in leasing, what you're doing is you're paying for the use of a portion of the car. Right? If your car starts at $20,000 and you use $10,000 of it, you're only paying that $10,000 because there's a residual value left over. That's why leasing can get so affordable. That's taking a sledgehammer to a nail approach, but I wanted to start off by looking at this. So if we've got a purchase price of $47,325, you have to find out how much of residual is left at the end of that 36 months. Well, for a new product like this, there's no real good information. So I went over here to Car Edge and I looked at the Hyundai Ioniq. And after 3 years, they say basically 87% residual value. Well, also, Car Edge, the Tesla Model Y, which has a much longer history for them to look at, 77.13. So somewhere 77, 80%, maybe 85% residual is what they're talking about. So hop back over here to our handy dandy spreadsheet, and I'm going to use 75 because it's a new model and the reviews have not been great. Not much information for finance professionals to go off of, so put in 75. That leaves $35,000 at the end of the lease. You're using $11,831. Divide that by 36, and you're talking about a payment of $328, almost $329, and that's not including taxes and some other little fees added in there at the beginning. But what Vinfast is doing is buying it down through the federal tax credit and themselves. So let's go back over here to Vinfast's website and let's click on that little star again. And what you'll see right here is that $47,200, including destination and handling of $1,200. But the next one's important. Less $7,500 in lease tax incentive. So I've done a whole video about this, that there's $7,500 available from the government for qualifying EVs. They have to be built in America. They have to meet certain sourcing standards for the batteries. And this, being a car built in Vietnam, does not qualify. But there's a loophole that was unintentional, that if the vehicle is leased, it doesn't matter where it was built or where the battery is sourced from. So they're taking that $7,500 and they say it right there, less the $7,500 in lease tax incentive. So they're wrapping that $7,500 in over the 3 years of this lease. Well, you go back to my spreadsheet, take out that $7,500 from the leased value that you're paying for, you're only paying $4,331. Divide that by the 36 months and you get a payment of $120. Kind of unbelievable, but again, there's fees and the apparent interest rate that's built in there, so that's not true. But suddenly, that $249 is not completely unbelievable. You're just taking that amount of value. So I went over here to Edmunds. They actually have a really interesting, really good lease estimator. And so I plugged it in and did this all again. There's your $47,325, and you're not going to discount it. No incentives. I'm not adding any incentives, and I kept this 75% residual value left over with 10,000 miles a year. No trade-in. Here's the acquisition and dealer fees for the Vinfast locally for 36 months. And you end up with a payment of, where to go? There it is, the top, $521. What? Well, plug in that $7,500 cash incentives from the government, $299. Okay, now you're in the same ballpark. And $299 is what they have on the Plus model, but this is the Eco. It's a little less expensive. So why would it be $249? Well, if you play with the residual a little bit, there you go. If you go back to that 77% or residual, you're $275. So it looks distinctly from this broad brush here that they are playing with the residual or getting a slightly better residual than maybe would be expected. Let's see if I can get to $249 here. I can get to $250. Okay, so with the 79% residual, but that's not the end of the story here. See, I've said all along about Vinfast, I'm actually super interested in them, and certainly for the factory and the jobs they're bringing here to North Carolina, I'm kind of pulling for them. And if they continue down the path, I wouldn't bet against them. But they've got a lot to figure out. They've got a lot to work through, and there are forces online who argue and come up with conspiracy theories about every single decision they make. But I've always said these products came too pricey. Okay? If you've got a $47,000 Vietnamese EV that has problems, and there's a lot of news out there about how many problems there are, or for 43 you can go buy a Tesla, which one are you going to do? It's a hard sell. And I believe all along they should have taken Hyundai and Kia's approach of coming in with smaller, cheaper vehicles, built up a name and a reputation, built out their dealer network, and built up, instead of coming out with something to hit right in the middle of the market. But what they've done is resist lowering their prices. And they're kind of giving incentives by hiding them in lease payments. Let's go back here real quick to their website and click on that little star one more time, because after that lease tax incentive, there's this important line right here. $15,349 in lease cash discount. Now, I'm not going to bore you and go back to the lease calculator because it's just estimates. But with no money down, they are literally eating $15,000 per vehicle to get down to that $249 a month lease rate. I think this is a tacit acknowledgement by the company that their products were too expensive, not ready for prime time, and they're having trouble moving them. We don't have the individual sales numbers for the fourth quarter of 2023 or for the entire year, but they were selling like 400. Not exactly competitive with what even Nissan's doing with the Ariya, for example. So they are buying it down. So instead of lowering the MSRP, hurting people who have bought already and devaluing their product, they're pushing leases, they're buying it down, kind of hidden from you, while they try to build up the reputation. I think this actually makes kind of a screaming deal. There's no way around it. I don't think I'm terribly inclined. I am allergic to leases myself, but for a product that I don't think I would end up keeping for 10 or 15 years, that I wouldn't trust that long, a 3-year lease suddenly starts to sound a little bit like a deal, and $75 less expensive than leasing a Tesla. It's an intriguing proposition that I'm not really ready to pull the trigger on, simply because the last video I saw, somebody picked it up, and within like an hour, the screen had locked up. So anyway, that's the end of it. I've got mixed feelings on it, is what I'm trying to say here. I'm glad they've gotten down to this. I think it'll help move, but how much profit margin is built into these cars? The company is hemorrhaging cash in their expansion, in their designing new models, and in their ramp up, in addition to building a multi-billion-dollar factory here in North Carolina. They need cash flow, and if they're buying down every single one of these leases just to get their sales up, they're going to lose even more money in the process. But I do recognize this as a way to carefully, without saying it, say our prices were wrong to begin with. Let me know what you think below, guys. Thanks.